Hi friends, it has been a while. We traveled to Australia and back. I got in a terrible reading slump, but I'm out of it and I have my April reading recap to share with you. So as always, I have everything written down here. It was just a wild, this is also from like March and April pretty much, because March was a huge chunk of my reading slump, but it also went into April. Anyway, if you're new here, I would really appreciate if you subscribed. This is just a really fun new little hobby for me. The community here is just so sweet, so I would really love if you subscribed and like joined the little community. The first book I read was Funny You Should Ask, which I even now just feels like I read it so long ago because it was back in March. So this is about a guy called Gabe, which was first of all weird, that's my husband's name. So to read his name in a rom-com was just like, I couldn't not picture him, which was just weird. And the girl is Chani. Gabe is a famous actor. 10 years before, they had like gotten together and she had like written this article about him that went totally viral and like blew up for both of them. Completely like skyrocketed her career, helped him with his career, and it was huge. And then, so it goes from that point of view from 10 years in the past to now, which is 10 years since then, and she is making like a follow-up article, and so they're like hanging out again. I don't want to give too much away, but it was a really enjoyable book. I rated it 3.5 stars. I wish I could tell you why, but I feel like I don't remember because it was so long ago. A 3.5 for me for a rom-com is like enjoyable. It just wasn't like life-changing or like my favorite. I think I liked the book because I love tropes like that, because I grew up being such a fangirl. So Bodyguard is also another one which I rated 5 stars. I loved that book. I'm gonna move on to what I think was a slow start to my reading slump. I then started The Guest List on Audible, and I always like to have an Audible going for like when I'm doing the dishes or when I'm driving or something. This is so hyped up. I also just read another book from the same author. I believe it was The Paris Apartment. I had enjoyed her writing a lot, so I wanted to dive into another book. The Guest List for me was probably the slowest Audible I've ever listened to. I hope this doesn't ruffle anyone's feathers either, because I know it's such a like loved book. I just found that probably the first 70% was really slow for me, and I know a lot of other people agreed with me when I think I talked about it in another video, and people agreed that it was a really slow start. I wouldn't even say the payoff was worth it at the end. I just didn't really enjoy this book. I ended up rating it a 3 stars. Maybe for others a 3 is too high for the way that I was describing how I felt about it, but I don't usually rate lower than a 3. 2 stars to me just seems too harsh, so I usually stick with 3 and above. I'm sorry if it's like your favorite book ever. So while that was happening, my friends and I, we have a little book club, and we were starting our next book club pick. We collectively picked Icebreaker. One of my friends already owned it, and my other friend had heard a lot about it, so we were like, cool, let's do it. So I downloaded the sample on my Kindle. If you don't know, you can get free samples on Kindles, which I feel like makes buying a Kindle so worth it for me, because there's been so many samples that I've started that I didn't really enjoy, and so I didn't buy the book. And so if I didn't have the Kindle, I would have just have all these books that I weren't really interested in reading. From the get-go, I was not enjoying it. This is also one that like I think my friends had seen a lot on like TikTok, and like it's a very popular book, but I couldn't even make it through the Kindle sample. I DNF'd a sample. I was just not enjoying it at all. The only note that I left was terrible first impression, swearing, and a lot of sex talk. That's just like not my cup of tea in a book. All I got from what I read of the sample, which really wasn't that much, was that it was like college kids who like were swearing a lot and were gonna go to parties and sleep with a bunch of people, and it just to me seemed like a book that I would not be interested in. I was reading this sample while traveling to Australia, dealing with jet lag, and I think just being on vacation too, like in another place, your whole schedule is thrown off, so I wasn't reading as much. But because the book that I was reading was Icebreaker, I didn't want to read. I think this truly was my first ever reading slump, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is what everyone talks about, like this is a reading slump, and I was so bummed. So it's about a figure skater and a hockey player, and something happens where they, I guess, come together and they're partners. I didn't even make it that far. Like I did not even get to any of the meat of the story. I just couldn't do it. So if you guys really like this book and you're like, no, this is such a good book, power through, then I'll tell my friends, and I guess we'll all pick it back up again. I should also say that I don't ever DNF. I'm not someone who likes to just stop reading a book. If I've already started it, I'm like, ugh, I may as well finish it. So during the same time, I was also reading for a video that I was was going to work on, but this is by Kate Claiborne, The Other Side of Disappearing. I've never read anything by her before, but I was sent these books and I was just so excited. And this was an advanced readers edition. This came out at the end of March, so I was just so excited to like start a book that wasn't out. It was just very exciting. Basically, this is about a mom who has disappeared. Two sisters live together, and it's also about like a podcast and a podcast host. They basically all go on this journey together to find the girl's mum, and there's a lot more that goes into it. So I was reading this at the same time that I was reading Icebreaker. I didn't make it through that far, but it wasn't grabbing me either. I wouldn't say I've officially DNF'd this. I've just put it to the side for now because I really just needed to get over my reading slump. I felt like already not being interested in Icebreaker and then having this was my only other book to read. It was just putting me into a deeper slump. But I decided to put this aside for now. Is that technically a DNF? I guess so. To really just focus on getting over my reading slump. The next book I decided to read was called Happily Never After. This is by Lynn Painter. I really loved the concept of this book. So it is about Sophie. Right before she gets married, she finds out that she's being cheated on, and so she hires someone called, I think he's called an objector. And so she hires an objector to come to the wedding. Basically, his only job is when they say, now, like, does anyone have an issue with them getting married? He stands up and says, I object, and says like, you've been cheating on her and da 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 da. And it sort of allows her to get out of the wedding and out of the marriage without her breaking it off, because there's like some sort of connection or some reason why someone doesn't want to be the one to break it off. I hope that's making sense. The objector is Max, so they start working together. So she is also then an objector. I really enjoyed the story. I thought the concept was really interesting, and I rated this a 3.5 stars. I feel like this was really helpful to ease me out of my reading slump because it was a really easy read, like a good Lynn Painter rom-com. I also liked at the very beginning there was a Formula One reference. So for any Formula One girlies out there, this book has a tiny little reference at the beginning. It was getting me out of my reading slump. The next book I read, today's the last day of April that I'm filming this. I'm going to finish this tonight. I'm almost finished, but I thought I would include it because this truly has gotten me out of my reading slump, and it is Yours Truly. This is my first book by Abby Jimenez, and all of her books have so many great reviews. She's been on my TBR for a while, and I'm so glad. This has been such an enjoyable book. Basically, this is about two doctors. So one is called Brianna. Her divorce is finalizing, and there's just like a lot going on. Her brother is sick, and then comes in this new doctor. His name is Jacob, and he, like, no one likes him. But it turns out that Jacob isn't bad after all, of course, and he writes her a letter, and then they go back and forth with some letters, and long story short, they end up fake dating for a particular reason, and it has just been really enjoyable. I'm almost finished, so unless I really don't like the ending, my rating for this right now is 4.5 stars. Thank you so much for getting me out of a reading slump because I'm out and it feels great. Something I do like about this book is I feel like she describes and presents anxiety in such an accurate way. Jacob in the book has pretty bad anxiety, and the way that she describes his thoughts and stuff, I'm like, this is so accurate. Thank goodness I'm now out of a reading slump. I now need some TBRs for the next month. The only one that I have so far, I mentioned this on another video on my other channel that I have. I am filming another video that involves this book, Then She Was Gone. I listened to None of This Is True on Audible and I loved it, and so I've been wanting to read something else by her. One of my friends recommended this to me, so I'm excited to read it, except I feel like, this is what I said on my other video, I feel like it might be really sensitive for me because this book is about a mum. One of her daughters goes missing. I'll read the synopsis. It's been 10 years since Ellie disappeared, but Laurel has never given up hope on finding her daughter. And then one day, a charming and charismatic stranger called Floyd walks into a cafe and sweeps Laurel off her feet. Before too long, she's staying the night at this house and being introduced to his 9-year-old daughter. And meeting her completely takes Laurel's breath away because Poppy is the spitting image of Ellie when she was that age. And now all these unanswered questions that have haunted Laurel come flooding back. What happened to Ellie? Where did she go? Who still has secrets to hide? That sounds so good to me. I'm just gonna keep reading it and see how I go. If at any point that it does get a bit sensitive to me, I may stop reading it. But the chapters are really short, which I love. Let me know if you've read that book and if you would recommend it. So that is my recap. If you have a book that you would recommend for me for this next month, as I'm getting out of this reading slump, I'm like, I feel like I'm not even prepared with what I'm gonna read next. Anyway, thank you for being here and hanging out. Thank you for being patient. I know I didn't do a reading recap video last month because now you know, terrible reading slump. But I love you guys and I will see you again very soon. Bye.